Welcome to Starbound. My name is Aram. I'll be your narrator for today. But before we get into today's story, please check below to see if you've subscribed to the channel. It's 100% free and just allows our videos to show up on your feed more often. Supreme Commander Pix stood at perfect attention before the assembled War Council, his iridescent wings held rigidly against his back. The council chambers stretched vast around him, its ornate pillars reaching toward the distant ceiling. Ancient battle standards hung between them, each commemorating a species that had fallen before Zik's military might. He activated the holographic display with a precise motion of his forelimb.
Esteemed council members, I present my analysis of the newly discovered species designated human.
The projection showed various human military installations, vehicles, and weapons, carefully scaled to Zik's standard units.
As you can see, their defensive technology remains firmly rooted in primitive projectile-based systems.
High Counselor Vex leaned forward, compound eyes reflecting the holographic light. No energy weapons at all?
None, High Counselor. Their most advanced targeting systems rely on crude electromagnetic detection rather than proper photonic matrices. They appear entirely ignorant of the fundamental principles of directed energy combat.
A ripple of clicking mandibles passed through the council, the traditional sign of anticipation before a successful conquest. Pix allowed himself a moment of pride. His analysis had been thorough, as befit an officer of his station. The humans' complete lack of energy weapon defenses made them perfect targets for the Zik's fleet's primary armament. Chief Weapon Officer Zik stepped forward at Pix's signal, his own wings vibrating slightly with barely contained enthusiasm.
"If I may, Honored Council."
At their gesture of assent, he brought up detailed technical specifications.
"Our latest generation of photon convergence arrays represent the pinnacle of Zik's military science. Each beam carries enough concentrated energy to overwhelm any known defense system."
He highlighted various diagrams showing energy coverage and penetration analysis.
"Even accounting for their unusual physical proportions, the humans have no countermeasures against our technology. Their atmospheric composition will actually enhance beam coherence by 12.3% compared to standard combat conditions."
High Counselor Vex's antennae twitched thoughtfully.
"And you are certain their physicality poses no unexpected complications? I recall difficulties in our conquest of the Crux. Their scales proved more reflective than originally calculated."
None whatsoever, Pix assured him. If anything, their dimensions make them more vulnerable. The energy dispersion radius of our weapons will affect a proportionally greater area of their bodies.
The council chambers fell silent as the members communicated through subtle shifts in posture and pheromone signatures. Pix maintained his rigid stance, confidence unwavering. His career had led to this moment, the discovery of a species ripe for conquest by the mighty Zik's fleet. Finally, High Counselor Vex rose to his full ceremonial height.
"The Council finds your analysis compelling, Supreme Commander. You have authorization to proceed with standard conquest protocols."
His mandibles clicked in formal approval.
"Show these humans the futility of resisting the Zik's empire."
Pix executed a perfect ceremonial bow, his wing membranes gleaming in the chamber's light.
It shall be done, High Counselor. Within a standard rotation, the humans will understand the price of technological ignorance.
He straightened, antennae held high with pride.
The Zik's fleet has never failed in its duty. We shall not start now.
As he marched from the council chambers, Pix allowed his mind to drift to the accolades that would follow this conquest. Perhaps they would even add a new battle standard to these hallowed halls,
one commemorating the day humanity learned to fear the awesome might of Zik's military science. Behind him, Chief Weapon Officer Zik hurried to keep pace, already muttering calculations about optimal firing solutions. Their fleet awaited, primed and ready to demonstrate why the Zik's empire had dominated space for so long. Humanity's primitive defenses would crumble before weapons they couldn't even comprehend. The era of human independence was about to end. Military Intelligence Officer Nix burst onto the bridge of the flagship Inevitable Victory, her wings still settling from her hasty flight through the corridors.
Supreme Commander, I have a report which requires your attention.
Pix turned from the main viewport where he'd been watching the fleet emerge from FTL travel, their sleek hulls reflecting the distant light of Sol. Report.
Sir, the preliminary show of force bombardment was conducted, as per your orders, to attempt to elicit a surrender and minimize bloodshed.
Nix's antennae twitched with uncertainty.
But the humans' response is unusual.
Unusual how? Chief Weapon Officer Zik demanded, looking up from his console where he'd been calculating firing solutions.
They're not reacting, sir, at all.
Pix chittered dismissively. Clearly, they lack the sensory sophistication to even detect our advanced technology. Maintain course and proceed with the operation as planned. He gestured to the tactical display where hundreds of Zik's warships moved in perfect formation. Our might has never failed to impress upon primitive species their proper place in the galaxy. The bridge crew clicked in dutiful agreement, though Nix's wings remained slightly agitated as she took her station. Around them, the Inevitable Victory's command center thrummed with activity. Status reports flowed in from every ship in the fleet as they assumed their positions relative to the third planet of this unremarkable solar system. All vessels report ready for combat operations, First Officer Quicks announced. Weapon systems are charged and crews stand at full readiness. Pix nodded in satisfaction. Excellent. Signal all ships. Begin final approach and prepare for tactical briefing. The fleet moved with practiced grace, each vessel sliding into position with precision born from countless successful campaigns. Their formation cast complex shadows across the void, a sight that had struck terror into many species before they accepted the inevitability of Zik's dominance. Tactical briefing commencing, Pix announced to the assembled command staff. Our first priority is demonstration of overwhelming force. They have already tacitly ignored our preliminary bombardment, though whether it is by willful ignorance or genuine matters little. The humans must understand resistance is futile before we suffer unnecessary losses. Chief Weapon Officer Zik brought up a holographic display of their primary weapon systems.
I've calibrated the photon convergence arrays for maximum visible effect. When we strike, the energy discharge will be impossible to ignore.
Their primitive senses may not detect our approach, Pix noted, but they cannot miss a synchronized strike from the entire fleet. The display of power will be memorable. The crew's mandibles clicked in anticipation as Zik continued his briefing.
I've calculated optimal firing patterns accounting for their atmospheric composition. The enhanced beam coherence should produce spectacular results. Additional data incoming,
Nix reported from her station.
The planetary atmosphere is denser than initial scans suggested. Energy dissipation rates may be affected.
Zik's antennae twitched in irritation.
A minor consideration. I've already adjusted the convergence matrices to compensate. Our weapons will perform exactly as intended.
Very good, Pix said. Take us into position for the first demonstration strike. Let us show these humans the true meaning of power. The mighty Zix fleet glided forward with deadly purpose, their formation now oriented for maximum weapons coverage of the target area.
All ships report ready to fire on your command,
Pix announced. Pix's wings trembled slightly with anticipation. This moment, the first strike against an unsuspecting species, never failed to fill him with pride in Zix military supremacy. "Commence firing sequence," he ordered. "Show these humans the futility of their primitive defenses." The fleet's weapons powered up in perfect synchronization, their energy matrices humming with deadly purpose.
Energy weapons at full charge,
Zik reported.
Firing in 3, 2, 1.
The inevitable victory's bridge fell silent as the first synchronized energy strike descended through Earth's atmosphere. Every member of the crew watched their displays intently, waiting for the inevitable chaos that would follow such an overwhelming show of force. Nothing happened.
Scanning target area,
Nyx announced, her voice tight with confusion.
Direct hits confirmed on multiple human structures, but no damage registered?
Impossible! Zik's antennae whipped back and forth as he examined the readings.
The energy discharge was perfect, beam coherence exactly as calculated.
He pulled up detailed sensor data, compound eyes reflecting the scrolling numbers.
The weapons functioned precisely as designed.
Yet the humans showed no reaction, First Officer Kix observed. No panic, no emergency responses, not even an increase in communications traffic. Supreme Commander Pix's wings vibrated with barely contained agitation. Increase power to maximum. Target their largest military installation within range. Show them we are not to be ignored. The fleet's weapons powered up again, their energy matrices pushing past safety tolerances. This time, the combined beams lit up the atmosphere itself, creating a spectacular light show as they converged on their target. Still nothing.
Sir?
Nyx said hesitantly.
I'm detecting increased electromagnetic emissions from the target area, but they appear to be entertainment broadcasts.
What? Pix demanded.
Civilian communications channels are showing elevated activity, but the content appears to be social media posts about unusual atmospheric phenomena. No panic, no military response. They don't seem to realize they're under attack.
Zix accessed multiple control stations simultaneously in a panic.
This defies all known physics. The energy dispersion is registering exactly as predicted, but it's having no effect.
He brought up more detailed scans.
Wait, these readings can't be right. The scale must be wrong.
Explain, Pix ordered, his own composure beginning to slip.
According to these measurements, the ambient thermal energy of their structures exceeds our weapon output by several orders of magnitude. But that would mean...
Zix's voice trailed off as the implications sank in.
Multiple human aircraft approaching our position,
Nyx reported suddenly.
Civilian vessels only. They appear to be sightseeing.
Pix stared at the tactical display in growing horror as dozens of human vehicles casually entered their carefully planned attack formation, completely ignoring the continued energy strikes. The mighty Zix fleet, terror of countless civilizations, was being treated like a tourist attraction. Fall back to secondary positions, he ordered, his pride warring with tactical necessity. Clearly, we need to reassess our approach. As the fleet withdrew to a safer distance, Zik continued analyzing the sensor data with increasingly frantic energy.
Sir, I've been comparing our scans with the original intelligence reports, and I believe there may have been a slight error in our initial calculations.
How slight? Pix asked, dreading the answer. Before Zik could respond, Nyx cut in again with her valuable information pulled directly from her electronic warfare suite.
Sir, the humans are deploying some kind of observation platform. It appears to be a research team led by someone designated as...
She paused, double-checking the translation.
Dr. Ellen Murphy, Department of Physics, Optical Sciences Division.
Pix's antennae drooped. A primitive species that didn't even have energy weapons had sent a scientist to study them. Not a military response, not emergency defensive measures, a researcher, as if the Zix fleet were some sort of curious natural phenomenon. Supreme Commander, First Officer Quix said carefully, perhaps we should consider requesting clarification from High Command before proceeding further. And tell them what? Pix demanded. That our most powerful weapons don't even merit a military response? That humans are treating our attack as a roadshow? He turned back to the tactical display where more civilian vehicles were gathering to observe his supposedly mighty fleet. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a terrible suspicion was beginning to form about exactly why their weapons were having so little effect. Maintain position, he ordered finally. And someone find me detailed measurements of human technological capabilities. I believe we may have made some incorrect assumptions. Supreme Commander Pix paced across the bridge of the inevitable victory, his antennae twitching with barely suppressed anxiety. Around him, the command crew tried desperately to look busy while avoiding eye contact with their increasingly agitated leader. How many attempts does this make? He asked no one in particular. 17, sir. First Officer Quix replied anyway. We've tried different wavelengths, pulse patterns, energy levels. He gestured at Chief Weapon Officer Zik, who was still frantically adjusting settings at his station.
The coherence is perfect,
Zix exclaimed for perhaps the 100th time.
The beams are striking exactly where targeted. The energy transfer is exactly as calculated. They just don't care. The humans appear to be treating it as some form of light show, Nix added from her intelligence station. Social media activity suggests they find it pretty.
Pix's wings buzzed in frustration. Pretty. Pretty? These are the most advanced weapons in the known galaxy! Were, Quix muttered under his breath, earning him a sharp glare from his commander. The situation can still be salvaged, Pix declared. Clearly we need to make a more visible demonstration of our power. Move the fleet into low orbit where they can't possibly ignore us. The bridge crew exchanged worried glances.
Sir,
Nix ventured carefully,
are you suggesting we enter their atmosphere?
How else would they recognize our superiority if they can't even see us properly? Pix demanded.
But, sir, their atmospheric density readings
are meaningless. The Zix fleet does not hide in the void like common raiders. Take us in. The mighty armada began its descent, their formation perfect despite the growing turbulence. As they approached the gathering of human observers, Pix allowed himself to hope that the sight of their warships would finally generate the appropriate response.
Sir?
Nix called out suddenly.
The crowd below is growing.
What?
They appear to be summoning more observers through their communication devices. Many are carrying small recording units. Some have brought what appear to be food and beverages.
Zik looked up from his console in horror.
What do they think this is? A social gathering? A play? We are invading their planet! Worse,
Nix reported, her voice strained.
I'm detecting numerous transmissions referring to us as...
As what? Pix demanded.
As cute.
The bridge fell silent, except for the sound of Zik's manipulators striking his console in despair. Sir, Quix said after a moment, perhaps we should consider the possibility that our intelligence reports may have contained some slight miscalculations regarding relative scale. Nonsense. Our ships are designed to inspire terror. Terror! Not, he shuddered, social media posts.
Incoming object!
Nick suddenly announced. The crew snapped to attention, hoping finally for some sign of military response. Their hopes were quickly dashed.
It appears to be a small packet of processed grain kernels exposed to high heat until expansion?
Nix's confusion was evident in her voice. What? Hicks demanded.
The humans call it popcorn, sir. One of them threw it at our third support wing.
And?
2 support ships had to engage in emergency thrusters to avoid it.
Hicks's antennae drooped as he watched the tactical display where his supposedly mighty fleet was now dodging thrown snack foods. On his personal screen, he began composing what would surely be the most humiliating report ever sent to the War Council. Sir, Quicks ventured carefully. What are your orders? Hicks stared at the growing crowd below, their recording devices glinting in the sunlight as they captured the Zix fleet's final shreds of dignity. Maintain position, he said finally. And someone find out if humans have any concept of honorable surrender for the party offering terms. I believe we may need to adjust our tactical objectives.
You mean retreat?
Zick asked hopefully. Tactical repositioning, Hicks corrected, for purely strategic purposes. And delete those sensor logs. No one must ever know that the mightiest fleet in the galaxy was nearly defeated by food. A new alert played from Nix's station.
Sir, now they're using some kind of projected light source to play with our ships.
Hicks didn't even want to look. Please tell me you're joking.
No, sir. Several humans are pointing small devices at our vessels which emit focused light beams. Our ships are engaging in evasive maneuvers, and thankfully they appear to be very bad shots.
Ancestors' wings, Hicks muttered. Prepare for immediate withdrawal. As the fleet began their less than dignified retreat, Hicks couldn't help but notice that the humans seemed disappointed to see them go. The final insult to a warrior culture whose most advanced technology had just been mistaken for evening entertainment. Should I begin drafting our report to High Command? Quicks asked. Yes, Hicks replied, but leave out the part about the popcorn. Dr. Helen Murphy had received many strange calls in her career as a physicist, and unknown atmospheric light phenomena behaving in geometrically precise patterns was far from a new one. UFO false positives were about as common as daylight. She'd expected some new form of aurora or perhaps an unusual weather event. She had not expected actual alien spaceships.
Recording time, mark, 1432.
She spoke into her tablet.
Multiple craft of clearly artificial design maintaining fixed position relative to observation platform.
She paused, adjusting her glasses.
Though craft may not be quite the right word given their scale.
Her graduate student, Thomas, peered through a set of binoculars.
Dr. Murphy, are those wings?
I believe so. The whole design appears to incorporate some form of biological elements. Quite elegant, actually.
She made another note.
Though considerably smaller than we might have expected.
A ground vehicle pulled up behind them, and a tall woman in a crisp suit emerged. She strode toward their position with practiced confidence, badge already extended.
Dr. Murphy, I'm Lucia Reese, First Contact Division.
She glanced up at the assembled fleet.
I understand you've had the most direct observation so far?
They have an entire division for an event that might have never happened? The silence was telling, followed by a more telling sigh from Dr. Helen.
Yes, though direct might be overstating it slightly.
Helen gestured at her instruments.
They've been maintaining this position for about 20 minutes, occasionally firing what appear to be focused light beams at various targets. Hostile?
Helen tried to find a diplomatic way to phrase it.
Not sure, really. The energy output is approximately equivalent to...
She coughed slightly.
A standard laser pointer.
Lucia's carefully maintained professional expression cracked slightly.
I'm sorry, did you say laser pointer? Well, a very well-focused one, Helen offered. The coherence is actually quite impressive at this scale. If you'd like, I can show you the spectrograph analysis.
She was interrupted by another series of light beams from the fleet. Lucia watched with growing bewilderment as the coordinated attack failed to so much as warm the surface of Helen's coffee cup.
Are they...
Lucia started.
Attempting to demonstrate military superiority? I believe so.
Helen took another sip of her completely unaffected coffee.
Though they seem to be growing frustrated with the lack of response.
They watched as the fleet repositioned itself, the formation still maintaining perfect military precision despite their obvious confusion.
I don't suppose,
Lucia said carefully,
you have any idea how we should handle this situation? My training didn't exactly what to do when an alien invasion force turns out to be...
She gestured vaguely.
Adorable?
Thomas suggested, earning him a sharp look from both women.
Unexpectedly compact,
Lucia corrected diplomatically,
with weapons that are technically less powerful than the one Commodore Razor Mittens chases. Commodore Razor Mittens?
Helen raised a perplexed eyebrow.
My cat, he has really sharp claws,
Lucia answered matter-of-factly. Helen was saved from responding by the arrival of what appeared to be the alien command ship. It approached their observation platform with stately grace, clearly intended to be intimidating. The effect was somewhat undermined by the small hummingbird that flew past. A hatch opened on the vessel's side, revealing a figure that stood with unmistakable military bearing, despite being slightly shorter than Helen's tablet.
Recording time, mark 14:45.
Helen managed, her scientific professionalism warring with other reactions.
First, direct contact with alien species. Subject appears to be insectoid in nature with iridescent wings and compound eyes. Currently displaying what I believe to be an attempt at intimidating posture.
Lucia stepped forward, drawing on years of diplomatic training.
Greetings, I am Lucia Rees, representing Earth's diplomatic corps.
She was interrupted by the alien commander drawing himself up to his full height, approximately 6 inches, and declaring something in a chittering language that managed to sound both formal and deeply offended. Their tablets quickly produced a translation after some off-putting glitchiness on the screens.
I am Supreme Commander Pix of the mighty Zix fleet, conqueror of 1,000 worlds. You will submit to our superior technology or face the consequences.
Helen's coffee cup chose that moment to finally register a temperature increase of 0.1 degrees from the fleet's combined firepower. Lucia took a deep breath.
Dr. Murphy, could you perhaps explain the technical situation while I request guidance on first contact protocols for this specific scenario?
Helen nodded, already composing a carefully worded explanation about relative energy scales that wouldn't further wound the clearly proud commander's dignity. She had a feeling this was going to be a very interesting day. Supreme Commander Pix maintained perfect military posture as Dr. Murphy finished her explanation of relative energy scales. His antennae remained absolutely still through sheer force of will, though several of his bridge crew had already succumbed to nervous twitching.
Let me ensure I understand correctly,
he said, proud that his voice remained steady.
You use comparable technology as entertainment devices?
Well, yes,
Dr. Murphy replied carefully.
Though I must say your beam coherence is quite remarkable given the engineering constraints at your scale.
Behind Pix, Chief Weapon Officer Zick made a sound that might have been a sob.
I see. Pix's wings remained rigidly locked against his back. And the devices you use for not entertainment are...
More powerful, yes.
Dr. Murphy at least had the grace to look apologetic.
Though, again, your precision targeting systems are very impressive.
First Officer Quicks leaned close to Pix's audio receptor. Sir, the fleet is reporting stability issues. The atmospheric currents are stronger than anticipated. As if to demonstrate his point, a mild breeze sent the third attack wing drifting sideways. Their pilots scrambled to compensate, thrusters firing frantically as they tried to maintain formation.
Supreme Commander?
Nix cut in urgently.
The human observation platform is becoming unstable. The vibrations from their movement are interfering with our senses.
Pix looked down. One of the humans had shifted position, causing their entire deck section to shake slightly. The mighty Zix fleet, terror of the galaxy, was struggling to maintain position because someone had taken a step.
Perhaps,
Lucia Rees suggested diplomatically,
we should continue this discussion in a more controlled environment. We have facilities better suited to your scale.
That won't be necessary,
Pix declared, just as another breeze scattered his reserve squadrons.
We simply need to adjust our tactical approach.
Dr. Murphy glanced at her tablet.
The weather report does show increasing winds this afternoon. If your ships are having difficulty with stability...
The Zix fleet fears no atmospheric condition,
Pix declared, though he did signal Quicks to begin calculating an appropriately dignified withdrawal, just in case. A new alarm sounded from Nix's station.
Sir, multiple small projectiles approaching at high velocity.
Defensive formation,
Pix ordered automatically. They watched in horror as a cloud of pollen drifted through their carefully arranged fleet, coating sensors and viewports with yellow dust. Several ships had to engage emergency cleaning protocols.
Ancestors' wings, Quicks muttered. How do they survive in this environment?
Quite comfortably, Dr. Murphy replied. Apparently, the virus Quicks used to remotely plant translation software had already been remotely reverse-engineered by some distant engineer.
Though I imagine it seems rather intense from your perspective.
Pix's antennae drooped slightly before he caught himself. The humans didn't even consider their world's natural conditions hostile. What else had their intelligence reports missed?
Sir?
Zix's voice was strained.
Should I continue attempting weapons calibration?
Pix watched as a small flying insect, nearly their size, casually buzzed through the space his fleet had designated as restricted airspace. His most elite pilots had to scramble to avoid a collision.
I believe,
he said carefully,
that may not be the most productive use of our time.
Oh, good,
Zix replied, slumping over his console.
Because I just finished analyzing their industrial energy usage and, well, our entire fleet's combined power output is approximately equivalent to one of their smaller cooking devices.
Pix managed not to visibly react, but it was a near thing. Around him, the bridge crew tried very hard to look busy while processing this latest blow to their military pride.
Commander,
Lucia Rees spoke up.
While we appreciate the visit, perhaps we should discuss establishing more formal diplomatic relations under less meteorologically challenging conditions.
A particularly strong gust of wind chose that moment to send the 7th Support Wing tumbling. Their stabilization thrusters whined in protest as they fought to remain upright.
Yes,
Pix said finally.
That might be prudent. For purely strategic reasons, of course.
Of course,
Lucia agreed smoothly.
Shall we say tomorrow? Indoors?
Pix gave what he hoped was a dignified nod.
Signal the fleet, he ordered Quicks. Initiate tactical withdrawal, with honor. As his ships struggled to maintain formation against the strengthening wind,
Pix consoled himself with one thought.
At least the War Council wasn't here to witness this, though explaining it to them was going to be interesting. Chief Weapon Officer Zig sat alone in his laboratory aboard the inevitable Victory, surrounded by displays showing human technological specifications. He hadn't moved in several time units, his antennae drooping lower with each new discovery.
It can't be right.
He muttered, rechecking his calculations for the 100th time.
Their medical procedures can't possibly.
But the data didn't lie. Humans routinely used lasers to reshape their visual organs for cosmetic purposes, without anesthesia. The amount of energy involved in these casual medical procedures exceeded the total output of the entire Zix fleet. A chime announced First Officer Quix's arrival. Still searching the humans' defensive capabilities?
Defensive?
Zix's wings vibrated with barely contained hysteria.
They don't even consider this technological weapons. Do you know what they use energy beams for? Entertainment, medicine, construction. They have devices in their homes that emit more power than our capital ships.
Surely you're exaggerating. Zik pulled up another display.
This is a human recreational facility. See these devices? They use them to point at presentations. For fun, they draw shapes with them on surfaces. The devices cost less than a single nutrition packet.
But our weapons are more sophisticated, Quix offered. More precise.
No! That's the worst part!
Zix's manipulators flew across his console, bringing up more displays.
Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. They have lasers that could...
He shuddered.
Well, let's just say I now understand why they found our attack amusing.
He brought up another screen showing a human ad reel.
Look, they use devices exactly like our weapons to entertain their companion animals. There are advertisements for them in their commercial centers.
Quix peered at the display. Is that one marketed specifically for distracting small pets?
Yes!
Zik collapsed into his chair.
I've spent my entire career perfecting what humans consider a child's plaything.
Surely the council will understand, Quix began.
Understand what? That the most advanced weapon in the Zix arsenal are literally toys to the species we just threatened?
Zix's antennae twitched spasmodically.
That our proud military tradition is based on technology humans give to their juveniles for amusement?
He pulled up another display.
Look at this. It's an ancient advertisement from their commercial networks. Fun for all ages. Hours of entertainment. Keep your cat occupied.
Perhaps we could adapt their technology, Quix suggested desperately.
They use more energy making their morning stimulant beverages than our entire fleet generates in a cycle.
Zix's voice had taken on a slightly manic tone.
Their primitive projectile weapons have more impact force than our supposedly advanced energy beams. Even their atmospheric vehicles generate more power than our cities.
He turned back to his displays, wings drooping.
I'm submitting my resignation. I can't. I just can't continue after learning this. Maybe I'll become a nutrient farmer. Something simple. Something that doesn't involve realizing your life's work is literally a joke.
The Supreme Commander won't accept it, Quix said. You're our finest weapons expert.
Expert?
Zik laughed bitterly.
I'm an expert in toys. Cheap toys with colorful packaging.
He brought up one final display.
Did you know they have an entire industry dedicated to producing our most advanced technology as novelty items? There are hundreds of varieties with different patterns. Some of them are shaped like primitive projectile weapons for added entertainment value.
Zik.
No, I'm done. Let someone else figure out how to maintain our military dignity after discovering we're armed with party favors.
He began composing his resignation.
I'm going to find a nice quiet corner of the galaxy where I never have to think about energy weapons again.
The commander will want your report on human defensive capabilities, Quix reminded him.
Tell him to visit their commercial centers. Apparently, that's where our most advanced military technology is sold, in the section marked Pet Supplies.
Quix left Zik to his existential crisis, making a mental note to have someone check on him later. The once proud weapons officer had begun repeatedly banging his head against his console while muttering about laser pointers. Scout leader Rix considered herself a veteran of the Zix interstellar forces. She'd led reconnaissance missions on dozens of worlds, faced unknown dangers, and always brought her team home safely. But nothing in her extensive training had prepared her for this.
Status report.
She sub-vocalized through the scout ship's internal communications.
All teams check in.
Team 1 holding position, came the first response. No sign the beast has detected us.
Team 2 maintaining surveillance distance,
Another scout reported.
though I recommend we abandon the mission and retreat to orbit immediately.
Rix watched the enormous creature through the ship's view screen. It lounged on what intelligence suggested was a typical human dwelling unit, casually grooming itself with a tongue larger than their entire vessel.
Maintain position, she ordered. We need to understand what defenses the humans employ against such monsters.
The beast's ear twitched. Every scout ship immediately engaged stealth protocols.
How do they survive?
Team 3's leader whispered, despite the fact that the creature couldn't possibly hear them through the ship's hull.
That thing could devour an entire Zix city in one bite. According to intelligence,
Rix replied, checking her data.
this is what humans classify as a house cat. They keep them as companions.
Silence filled the communication channel as her teams processed this information. Team 1's leader finally managed. They keep these things as pets.
Affirmative. Apparently they're considered docile.
The creature chose that moment to reveal several dozen razor-sharp teeth as it yawned. Team 2's ship drifted backwards slightly.
Docile?
Someone squeaked.
Those claws are bigger than our landing struts. Focus,
Rix ordered.
we have a mission to complete. The Supreme Commander needs to understand what we're dealing with here.
She brought up their scan results.
Preliminary analysis suggests the creature masses more than 300 Zix warriors. Its natural weapons appear capable of...
A red alert flashed across her console.
Report!
The beast! Team 3 called out. It's looking right at us! Rix watched in horror as the creature's pupils dilated, focusing directly on their position. Its entire body tensed, ready to pounce.
Evasive action!
She ordered.
Emergency retreat protocols!
The scout ship scattered as several tons of curious feline launched itself at their position. Team 2 barely avoided being swatted by a paw the size of a transport vessel.
It's following us!
Someone screamed over the comms.
How can something that big move so fast? Maintain formation!
Rix called out, even as her own ship spiraled to avoid another swipe.
We are warriors of the Zix Empire! We will not be defeated by a mere...
A playful bat from the creature's paw sent her ship tumbling end over end. Warning sirens blared as the stabilization system struggled to compensate.
New mission protocol!
She announced, abandoning dignity.
Retreat! Retreat! Get back to the inevitable victory immediately!
The scout ships fled in terror as the beast bounded after them, clearly enjoying this new game. Several teams had to make emergency course corrections to avoid its attempts to catch them.
Scout leader!
Her communications officer called out.
The Victory is requesting our status report.
Rix watched another scout ship narrowly avoid being pounced on.
Tell them Earth is even more hostile than we imagined, and remind me to submit a formal protest about our intelligence department's definition of docile.
They finally managed to escape when the creature became distracted by a small red dot that appeared on a nearby wall. Rix made a note to research what kind of weapon could command the attention of such a terrifying beast. Hours later, safely aboard the Victory, she finished her report to Supreme Commander Pix. The bridge had fallen completely silent. Let me be clear, Pix said finally. You're telling me that humans not only survive along such creatures, but voluntarily share their dwellings with them.
Yes, sir. And apparently consider them...
She checked her notes.
Cute and cuddly.
Pix's antennae drooped. Add it to the briefing for the War Council. Right after the section about our weapons being classified as entertainment devices.
Sir, First Officer Quick spoke up. The human media outlets are requesting a statement about our presence.
What kind of statement?
They want to know if we'll be returning. Apparently their companion beasts found us entertaining.
Hicks stared at the tactical display where dozens of human residences were marked as containing these house cats. Zick was right, he muttered. I'm beginning to think nutrient farming might be a worthwhile career change.
Lucia Rees had organized many diplomatic functions in her career, but this was certainly the most unique. She surveyed the converted conference room where a carefully constructed miniature meeting table sat atop the regular one.
The proportions are correct?
She asked Dr. Murphy, who was making final adjustments with calipers.
As near as we can measure,
Helen confirmed.
Though we should probably remove the coffee cups from the main table, just in case someone gestures too emphatically.
They'd barely finished preparations when Supreme Commander Pix arrived with his delegation. The Zix representatives marched in perfect formation up the specially constructed ramp, their wings held rigidly at attention. Lucia activated her brand new cutting-edge translation device.
Welcome, honored representatives. We appreciate you joining us for these historic discussions.
Hicks managed a formal bow without his antennae visibly twitching.
The Zix Empire values diplomatic discourse between... He paused almost imperceptibly. Civilized species.
The human delegates seated around the main table maintained carefully neutral expressions. They'd been extensively briefed on the importance of not making any comments about the scale of the proceedings.
Perhaps we should begin by discussing cultural exchange opportunities,
Lucia suggested.
There's clearly much we could learn from each other.
Indeed,
Pix replied, though his wings tensed slightly.
The Zix Empire has much to offer in terms of technological advancement and military tradition.
One of the human delegates chose that exact moment to check their phone. The screen's light output exceeded the Zix fleet's combined weapon systems. Pix soldiered on.
Our scientists have made remarkable advances in energy manipulation and...
A notification sound interrupted him. The human delegates all quickly silenced their devices, but the damage was done. Chief Weapon Officer Zick, who had insisted on attending despite his earlier breakdown, began quietly keening.
Yes, well...
Lucia hurried to recover.
We are very interested in your achievements in miniaturization and precision engineering.
Miniaturization? Pix's antennae twitched despite his best efforts.
I mean, your ability to create such sophisticated systems at your scale is remarkable,
Dr. Murphy interjected.
The efficiency of your power generation alone.
Perhaps, Pix cut in, we should focus on more immediate concerns, such as establishing proper diplomatic protocols.
Of course,
Lucia agreed smoothly.
We've prepared some preliminary documentation.
She carefully placed a micro-printed document on the miniature table. The Zix delegation stared at it in silence.
Is something wrong?
No,
Pix assured her, though his wings were vibrating slightly.
It's just very large.
Oh, we can provide a smaller version.
That won't be necessary,
he said quickly.
We'll simply need to collaborate on transportation.
They watched as the entire Zix delegation worked together to move the document to their side of the table. The human delegates became very interested in their notepads.
Now then,
Pix continued, trying to recover some dignity.
Regarding the matter of our military presence,
the building's ventilation system chose that moment to cycle on. The resulting breeze scattered the Zix's carefully arranged materials across the miniature table.
Perhaps we should relocate to a more controlled environment?
Lucia suggested, staring daggers at Dr. Helen, who was hastily looking for the thermostat, as they helped gather the tiny documents.
That would be acceptable, Pix managed, his formal posture slightly undermined by having to chase a drifting paper across the table. Dr. Murphy raised her hand.
I have a specialized laboratory with controlled atmospheric conditions. Though you might find it a bit warm, it's calibrated for semiconductor research. Ancestors preserve us,
one of the Zix delegates muttered.
Even their scientific equipment generates more energy than our ships. What was that?
Lucia asked. Nothing, Pix said quickly. We would be honored to continue discussions in your facility. As they prepared to relocate, Lucia overheard one of the Zix delegates whispering to another.
Did you see the size of the writing implements? My entire family could live on one. Quiet. We're supposed to be projecting military strength. Military strength? The communications devices output more energy than our planetary defense grid.
Lucia pretended not to notice Pix's antennae drooping further with each comment. She made a mental note to request smaller notepads for the next meeting, and perhaps warn the human delegates about using their phones. The things they don't cover in diplomatic training. The Zix War Council chamber was unusually quiet as they reviewed Supreme Commander Pix's final report. The ancient battle standards seemed to loom larger than ever in the silence. Finally, High Counselor Vex spoke.
You are certain these measurements are accurate?
Unfortunately, yes. Pix's antennae remained perfectly still through sheer force of will. Our most sophisticated analysis devices confirm it, though the human's own sensors are considerably more advanced.
And their defensive capabilities?
Technically non-existent, Pix replied carefully, as they have no need to defend against our level of technology. Their civilian infrastructure alone operates at energy levels that make our military equipment seem quaint. A ripple of distressed chittering passed through the council. One of the younger members spoke up. But surely our superior military tradition was very politely not mentioned by the humans, Pix interrupted, along with several other things they were kind enough to pretend not to notice. He brought up a series of images. This is what they classify as a personal computing device. Its power output exceeds our capital ships. This is a food preparation unit. It generates more energy than our planetary defense grid. And this, he paused. This is what they call a laser pointer. They give them to children as toys. The council chamber erupted in agitated wing buzzing. High Counselor Vex raised his forelimbs for silence.
Your recommendations, Supreme Commander?
A complete reconsideration of our military doctrine, Pix said firmly, and perhaps some adjustments to our first contact protocols, specifically adding a section about checking relative scale before issuing threats.
And the humans? How do they view us after this incident?
Pix's wings twitched slightly. They have been extraordinarily diplomatic about the entire situation. Dr. Murphy has even proposed a technological exchange program, though she was very careful about how she phrased it.
Exchange? One of the council members asked. What could they possibly want from us?
Our miniaturization techniques, apparently. Pix managed not to sound too pleased. They were quite impressed by our ability to create sophisticated systems at our scale. Dr. Murphy seemed particularly excited about potential applications in nanotechnology.
So, we maintain some dignity at least,
Vex noted. As much as possible when dealing with beings who could accidentally knock over our largest city while reaching for a drink, Pix agreed. They're actually quite respectful, all things considered, even if they did have to child-proof the diplomatic meeting room. The council processed this in silence for several moments.
Very well,
Vex said finally.
We hereby officially rescind our declaration of war. Earth shall be classified as...
He paused, searching for appropriately diplomatic phrasing.
Unnecessarily large, but mostly harmless.
Thank you, High Counselor. Pix bowed formally. Shall I begin drafting new first contact protocols?
Yes, and perhaps update our military recruitment materials. I suspect we'll need to adjust our claims about having the most advanced technology in known space.
Already done, Pix assured him. Though Weapon Officer Zick had to take a medical leave first, for therapy about a recent existential crisis.
Understandable.
Vex's antennae dipped sympathetically.
And the official history?
We'll record that we initiated peaceful contact after careful consideration of strategic factors, Pix said smoothly. No need to mention the tactical reassessment.
Excellent.
Vex rose to his full height.
You have served with honor under difficult circumstances, Supreme Commander. The Empire recognizes your contribution to preventing what could have been a rather embarrassing incident.
Thank you, High Counselor. Pix bowed again. Though, if you'll excuse me, I need to finalize the details of our technology exchange program. Dr. Murphy is particularly interested in our atmospheric stabilizers.
Our ship's stabilization systems? Why?
Apparently, they could revolutionize human drone technology. Pix's antennae twitched slightly. I didn't have the heart to tell her we developed them just to deal with light breezes. As he left the council chambers, Pix allowed himself a small moment of satisfaction. They might not have conquered Earth, but they had managed to salvage some dignity from the situation. And, if nothing else, they'd learned some valuable lessons about checking size disparities before threatening war.